coming to Everyday Athlete. We've got Megan here from Lake Washington Physical Therapy to talk about when can I run, talking about injuries and exercises. Take it away.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight, and thank you, Emma and Everyday Athlete, for letting me have this lecture tonight. So tonight I'll be talking about the guidelines and prerequisites that I use to get my running patients back to running pain-free. So before I get into those details, I'll give you a little background about myself. I've pretty much been a runner my whole life. I did elementary school in Eugene, Oregon, which some of you know it's running town. And both of my parents are pretty big runners themselves. So as soon as I could get to running, my parents were having me do cross country and track meets. So I ran in elementary, middle, and high school, and then I was lucky enough to run on a scholarship at Western Washington University, where I mainly did the 400-meter race. And then after college, I worked at Lake Washington PT as an aide for 2 years. And with working at LWPT, I also wanted to continue with track, so I went and coached at the high school I went to, Skyline High School, and did the distance track team there for 2 seasons. And after 2 years of working with track and as an aide at LWPT, I got into University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, where in San Diego, so I got to live in beautiful sunny San Diego for 3 years, getting my doctorate of physical therapy. And then I was lucky enough to come back and work for Ben and LWPT, and I've been there since 2015. So before I get going into the details of the guidelines that I use, I kind of want to get an idea of what you guys do for running. So are most of you runners here? Sort of? Okay. Any injuries with running at all? Not yet? Okay. All right. Well, that's good. No injuries yet, and hopefully with the exercises that we do today, you can stay injury-free. So with most of my runners, a lot of the questions that they come in and ask is, do I really have to stop running during physical therapy? If I keep running, is it going to make my injury worse? Or what is the timeline we're talking about where I can't run, and when can I get back into running? So for most of my patients, I don't give them a certain time frame for when they can go back to running, because everybody's going to be different depending on the body type, the injury, how long they've had the injury for. So I don't give them a timeline, but I tell my patients that the exercises, the prerequisites, and the guidelines that I use to get you back to running is how we'll progress through the time frame. So here are the prereqs that I use. The first one is being able to unilaterally load on both lower extremities with good postural stability. Able to progress through that forefoot and first ray there. Ability to progress the leg over your foot. Being able to strengthen in open and closed chain kinetics, which is non-weight-bearing and weight-bearing exercises. Being able to hop on each leg, which we'll get into plyometrics, because if you think about running, it's pretty much hopping and bounding from one leg to the next. And then being able to progressively start that run-walk program and getting back to full running. So here we've got some pictures of people running, squatting, and single leg squats. That's one of the first things I have my patients do. The first visit is seeing how they stand on one leg, how they squat, and how they single leg squat, because I'm mainly looking for a particular muscle strength. Do any of you know which muscle I'm talking about here? I know 2 of you do. Your gluteus medius. So the main thing that the gluteus medius does is stabilizes your hip in that stance leg. So when you're on one foot. So if you look at these pictures here, let's start on the way end right there with the yellow lines. So when she's standing on her right leg, you can tell she doesn't have that stability and strength through her right hip, so you're going to get that opposite hip drop, because that glute med works to eccentrically control your opposite hip. And if you think about your lower extremities here, we've got kind of like a domino effect. So if you don't have that stability and strength in your hips, down the chain is going to have to compensate. So with your hip, if you don't have that stability, you're going to get that opposite hip drop. And what follows the hip is your femur, your thigh bone, and it'll have that tendency to drop inward towards midline. And then what follows your thigh is your knee, so you'll get that knee valgus angle there, which that knee caves in. And then following the knee, you've got your shin bone, your tibia, and that usually has a tendency to internally rotate. And then following your shin bone, you've got your foot and ankle, which usually with that impact, you get that medial impact through your foot called pronation. So here you can see with squatting and single leg squatting as well, a lot of people have the tendency to be anterior chain dominant, using their quads and not sitting back into their glutes and using their glutes. And then same thing with running, single leg squat, you have that hip drop and that knee diving in. So usually the second visit is when I'll videotape people running, so from the back and the side and the front, as well as squatting and single leg squatting, so they get that visual idea of what's happening when they're running. So every time they're planting that foot down, you're getting that repetitive hip drop, knee coming in, which can then lead to some injuries. So how do we strengthen that muscle? Sometimes I start in a more non-functional, so non-weight bearing. And the reason I do that is because, one, people are compensating and using other muscles, or they're in too much pain to weight through that leg. So two of the main exercises that I like to do to start kind of in that non-functional, non-weight bearing is the side-lying hip abduction and the clamshells, which the side-lying hip abduction has been shown to have one of the highest EMG activation for that gluteus medius, and then the different variations in the clamshells. And then, so now we're going to get into kind of the prerequisites, which will be kind of more of that functional weight-bearing exercises. So that first one that I talked about is the unilateral loading and progressing through that forefoot. And a great exercise I like to do is either just balancing on one leg or engaging and starting to initiate that marching. Marching is a great way to get that opposite arm, opposite leg going, which is with running, as well as focusing on getting that forefoot down. A lot of runners have a tendency to overstride and heel strike, so initiating more, keeping your feet closer to your mid-center of gravity and landing more on that forefoot there. So I've got a video to show you here. And I have to thank Chris Johnson for letting me use all of his awesome videos. So this first one here is the marching. Usually start off pretty slow and controlled, focusing on weight bearing through that leg, standing up with that nice upright posture and landing through that forefoot, so you can see he doesn't heel strike. And as this video progresses here, you can see start to increase that speed to get them in more of that running pace. Okay. All right, and then the next thing is progressing that leg over that ankle. So with running, when you're in that stance leg, as you progress to swing phase, you're progressing that leg over the ankle. Exercise I really like with progressing the leg over the ankle are step-ups. I usually start with kind of smaller step-ups, like 4-inch to 6-inch, and progressing to a higher step-up, like a 12-inch. And I usually start with just the forward motion, so you're getting that ankle dorsiflexion, you're getting your quad engaging to get that nice upright posture, having that glute med activate so you're not having that hip drop and the knee coming in, as well as your core is engaging to help with your balance. And then with the step-ups, once they've got that forward I usually progress to lateral, so side to side, as well as a 4-way step 1. So I'll show you those pictures here so you get an idea. So this video here has a resistance band. I wouldn't start my patients with a resistance band, but that's something that they could progress to. And my patients will look and be like, oh, a step up, not a big deal. But they'll find when they do it properly that that glute med really kicks in to help stabilize. Okay, and then the next one here is the 4-way. So the progression of just the forward step ups here. So he's got a barbell there. That's something I usually don't do with my patients. You can do free weights, but just getting that motion down, having that knee control, that hip control, and progressing that leg over the ankle. So coming up forward, sideways, backwards, and that curtsy lunge there. And another exercise that I used with keeping that leg progressing over that ankle and getting that lateral hip musculature kicking in is lateral tap outs. So some of you might have heard like monster walks. Lateral tap outs are a different variation of that. So I'll show you here. So he doesn't have a resistance band. I usually start with some easy resistance and progress to harder. But here you can tell his hips are staying put there, his knees not caving in, and that glute med will fire pretty quickly. Okay, so far all those exercises have been talking about getting that muscle recruitment, especially the glute med, as well as building up that strength and endurance. But with running, you need that speed and force kicking in, so that's when plyometrics come into play. So usually I start with some single side-to-side hopping or agility ladder and progressing to single leg bounding. Some people have a hard time with hopping on one leg, so that's when I'll start with a Bosu ball. So they've got kind of that trampoline input to help them with the hopping. And then just progressing from skipping to then fast skipping and eventually into running. So I'll show you some of those videos here so you get an idea. So this side step hopping progression here. So you're starting off really slow and controlled, focusing on your posture, not letting that hip drop or that knee cave in. And then he'll progress to quicker hopping, which will really start to engage those lateral hip muscles like the gluteus medius. And then the last one here, a little bit quicker, and then also he'll start to come forward so you're getting some of that bounding with it. And then here, I do a lot of skipping and marching kind of as a warm-up for my running patients. Just getting them, so working on that unilateral loading but in that quicker pace and focusing on landing on your forefoot and not overstriding. Okay, so now the next thing is running. So with running, what I have my patients do is I have them run with the Run Cadence app, which is going to be free for all of you guys tonight. You can download the app and try it out yourself. So I'll talk a little bit about it. So what I'll have my runners do without giving them any cues to start off with is run on the treadmill for a minute, holding my iPhone or their iPhone if they have the app, and it measures their cadence. And what I usually look for in cadence is, so on the slower end is about 150, 160 steps per minute. And usually when you see that slower cadence, you're seeing that overstriding and that heel strike. So what I have them do after I know what their cadence is I'll give them the cues to think of keeping their feet more underneath their body and doing the quicker, quieter stepping to increase their cadence. Optimal cadence is usually about 180 steps per minute. But say they're starting at 150 or 160, I'm not going to jump them right up to 180. So I have them do that 5% increase. And research has shown that even just a 5% increase can decrease that energy absorption through your joints by 20%. So improving their cadence gradually has been shown to decrease their overstride as well as decrease their chances of injury and impact through those joints. And then so here is the link to a lot of the videos I showed tonight, as well as they have a lot of research on their website for you if you want to look further into that, as well as my email if you guys have any questions after tonight. So I do want to do some of the exercises with you guys tonight, but before that, do you guys have any questions? Nope. Does Facebook Live have anything, Ben?
No questions.
Okay. All right, so what I'll have you guys do is let's kind of move the chairs out of the way here, and we'll do some of those exercises. Did you want to keep this going?
No, I just dropped the arms. Walk forward.
Okay.
Just get a little thing in front of
Oh. And thank you to all of you guys that are watching online. I appreciate it.